Howdy, folks. The weather has improved quite a bit, which means all of our snow and ice is melting, which also means the kids are back at it at school instead of snow days and staying home. So I've got time to sit down and collect my thoughts and make a video. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about echolalia, a common symptom of autism and other things like Tourette syndrome or dementia even. Echolalia, or uh, repeated vocalizations, is probably the longest running symptom I have had that's related to autism. It started for me back in 2017 in concert with my awareness of PTSD. If I remember correctly, I had had my suicide ideation scare, called the hotline, signed up for therapy with a VA clinic, was seeing a therapist for 5, 6 months, and I started to have, at the time I called them unwanted vocalizations, completely out of my control, related to, looking back now, I see that they were related to times where my system was overwhelmed, be it overwhelmed with anxiety, driving in traffic, overwhelmed with noises in crowds, or overwhelmed with just too much stimulation from whatever was going on. Uh, Often overwhelmed from too many thoughts in my head, what I still call to this day bad memories that would just come up and assault me. There's no other way to say it, just a bad memory will come up, and then it's not like I lose consciousness of the present, but like 50% of my awareness is taken up with this bad memory, and it just, all the feelings, all of the sounds, all of the dialogue, all of the emotions of the time come back, and then on top of that comes shame. So there's obviously a lot going on in these, but I started, and these bad memories have been a thing that's happened for decades now, but the new thing was the unwanted vocalizations, the echolalia that came with them. That started when I was knee deep in beginning to process my PTSD from military service. At the time, I told my therapist about it. She was not surprised, didn't really explain it to me. I say didn't explain it to me, but that's been my experience of most things in therapy. The explanation comes from yourself in looking into why things are the way they are within you. I'm going to get sidetracked real easy here. So yeah, 2017 started unwanted vocalizations. And depending on my state or the situation, sometimes at the top of my lungs, especially if I'm in a really intense environment or a really noisy, stimulating environment, like working in a garage with power tools, or processing firewood, chainsaw or skid loader running. Lost my train of thought. But as I understand it now, in the lens of autism, the echolalia is an attempt for the body to soothe from overstimulation. Why it's exactly tied to bad memories for me, I don't know. I find that the most frequent occurrence of it. Um, so maybe it's the something makes me think of a bad memory, and so then the echolalia helps me try to soothe. I don't know. But at first, it was a really unwanted symptom, even just from the understanding of, this is just part of mental health stuff with PTSD. Like, I felt really weird. It was like, oh, great, something else that makes me stick out in public. Like, I'm already having trouble with PTSD symptoms, anger and depression and anxiety. I'm trying to figure out this suicide ideation thing. I don't need something else. And so I made a really concerted effort to tamp those vocalizations down. And I had some success actually for a while, for about 2 years. And I thought, great, I'm in control. I've got this. This is, I'm making progress. I think I've talked about before, maybe not in depth, but it's definitely in my PTSD book. As you begin working on mental health, you uncover and unbury and make space in your awareness for all this baggage you're carrying. Things start to pop up and pop up and pop up. And things get, this is the unsaid truth of mental health work, things get worse before they get better. So in that, I'm having success tamping it down, and then the freaking cork was just blown clean off and lost. And I started to have really pronounced echolalia incidents, pronounced vocalizations that I was not happy about, and made me feel like a failure for a while. Probably contributed to depression, definitely contributed to anxiety in social situations where I wanted to appear normal and in control. At the time, I didn't know what I didn't know. Looking back now, the fact that my vocalizations got out of hand was a good thing. It was an indication, an indication that there was more work needed to be done. I needed help. And two, my body was doing what it could do to soothe and to help me cope with the hard work I was doing. So it was just simply, a thing that happens. Like my therapist responded, like, yeah, that's expected. It was completely expected and normal. And after I went through the tamping it down, and then the boom, cork pops off and it's uncontrollable now, absolutely. And then the despair and anger, the grief of having this new thing about me that I have to come to terms with eventually. And this was not a quick process. I say eventually, like in the last couple of months, I've just come to accept it and tell the people around me what's happening and own it. It's just a part of who I am. I'm overanalyzing it right now as I'm making the video. It happens frequently when I'm in traffic, because traffic can be really stupid. So I'll be bringing my kids home from sports practice, and I'll say something or sing something or have a vocalization, and I'll realize it, and then I'll stop and take a deep breath, and then I'll just say, bad memory. And my children will go, yeah, we know. Like, it's no big deal. It's still, I think, important to them that I communicate what's happening so that they know. Or they will say to me, having a bad memory, Dad? Yeah, that's what's happening. And then sometimes, if we're not driving, they'll say, need a hug? And that's also wonderful. So what does my echolalia look like? A lot of times it'll be song lyrics or sing-song phrases repeated over and over again. Not necessarily songs that are on the radio, but just whatever my brain comes up with. Not like the earworm kind of thing, but just whatever phrase my brain happens to associate or want to use with this specific memory. Because they're bad memories, there's obviously some relation to trauma in my past from this. My echolalia also looks like prayer in the mornings. I try to take time for, hydration, coffee, meditation, and prayer first thing. In addition to getting, breakfast out for the kids and starting the fire and that kind of stuff. And my brain will just start thinking about the day or thinking about what was left over at the end of the day. If I get off track in my meditation and prayer, I will repeat the last phrase of the prayer that I was on over and over and over again until I get back on track. And that repetition eventually is loud enough or grabs my attention enough to say, hey, you'll get to that. That's just a worry. Right now, back on task, let's do our morning meditation and prayer. Yeah, echolalia. it's really kind of a strange experience every time it happens still, even though I'm accepting it, leaning into it, owning it as just part of my experience of life. It's very strange. Before I learned the term echolalia, I would have just called my vocalizations tics, and I think that comes from having a friend with Tourette syndrome. I think that's all I have to say about echolalia. I feel a little better about this video. It was more measured. So what do you think about echolalia? Repetitive, unwanted, unsolicited vocalizations? Do you have any echolalias? Do you do any echolalia in your life? Do you know anybody who does? Let me know down in the comments. Hope you're doing well. Hope 2024 is starting out well for you. Take care. Remember, hope is a choice.